Hello and welcome to the Learning and Design Mastermind Vodcast, a vodcast that explores many topics in the field of instructional design. I am Daisy Barreto, your host, and with me somewhere here on the screen is my co-host, Sherry Conklin. And I'm happy to be your guide as we explore these topics during our vodcast sessions. In each episode, we'll cover the latest trends and practical tips from professionals in the field that can help you develop and expand your learning experiences. Here with us today is Lauren Daniel, an MIT alumnus. And Lauren, could you please tell us more about your position, where you're currently working, and what do you do?
Sure. So I work as the Water Education Program Coordinator for the North Carolina Division of Water Resources, which is housed in the Department of Environmental Quality. So I have a lot of coworkers that work on protecting and restoring the environment throughout North Carolina. And then tucked away in a nice little corner is me with my educational programs to support outreach providers and formal classroom teachers. So I run three main programs that are all focused around environmental education with respect to water management. I run the Project WET program. I run It's Our Water, which is North Carolina-centric water resource management education, and North Carolina Stream Watch, which is a great tool to go out and learn about and connect with the streams in your community and share those on a statewide map.
Thank you, Laura. That's great to know all that you're doing. One question that I'm going to ask you to you is that how did you get to your position? Because I know that in the past you were a former educator, and now you are where you are. And I know that sometimes I get questions from students, they're in K-12, and that transition process, or even, what is out there they don't know. But just from your own experience, how was, getting to where you are in that transition process for you?
Well, whew, to answer your question directly off the bat, I got to this position by asking questions, like a lot of questions. That's essentially how I got here. But yeah, so I used to teach elementary education. I taught in Texas for a little while, and I taught here in North Carolina for a little while. I did special education. I wrote IEPs. I I supported learners in a formal education classroom. But then one day I received an email with the opportunity to apply for a trip to Belize with the Natural Science Museum. And that's where I learned. I went on that trip. It was amazing. It was life-changing. And I realized that I was really into connecting students with the environment and teaching our standards with using just the natural world. So that kind of tipped the scales to help me, find other options outside of the formal classroom. But while I was teaching in the EC classroom, I was taking the program, the instructional design and technology. And so I was kind of building like a Lego building. I was piecing together the pieces for learning how to design instruction in a more systematic way. It was kind of a conglomeration of different efforts and curiosities that got me to where I am now.
No, that's fascinating, and I don't think like and it's good to hear because I think that's what usually happening. The more that we have these podcasts, is hearing how people got where they got, and it's is one of those things like it's meant to be, like in as you mentioned, right? Like, your curiosity, one experience led to another and then really reach you to where you are right now. And then my next question to you is like if you could talk about like, from what you learn in the program or even some of the things that you are currently doing, maybe some of these principles of instructional design that that you can discuss and how the educators can apply in develop lessons about the environment education or in general, how can those two, connect and merge together?
Hmm. Well, excuse me. I think to answer that question, to understand like how I use instructional design and what I do, I to really understand it myself, I have to compare how I used to teach and how I used to design instruction to how I approach it now. Um, and also I feel like it's relevant to say that I come from a long line of teachers and I fought it for years, y'all. My original degree wasn't even in education. And so lo and behold, but, so I used to design instruction. I used to teach by saying, these are my standards. What resources do I have? And how can I, keep it fun in the classroom for the students to engage with it? And it was kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck. So learning about the systematic design of instruction, golly, I mean, I don't mean to make it a huge thing, but it really was life-changing to think of it more of like why do people learn? What motivates a human to take in new information and retain it? And so I think something that has really stuck with me is understanding what people need to know. You always need to know where you're going, where you're driving the ship. But then how to make that as relevant and meaningful to the learner, I think that results in the strongest, foundation for designing instruction. So I hate to give you a roundabout answer, but I think the biggest part of understanding instructional design is really targeting what the learner needs to know, how to connect it with them and make it real and meaningful. And from there, you can kind of tie together the methods and the techniques to provide that instruction effectively.
Thank you, Lauren. And one of the things that I was going to ask you, and especially because like we were talking early, about the instruction design process, what you learn in classroom and how it's in the real world. Can you
Mhm.
talk about maybe what are some of like, yeah, you learned this, but in the real world, things are a little bit different, so can you talk a little bit more about your experience, what you've seen that maybe this is not what you can envision or that you may not face as an instructional designer or a student when you come to the real world?
Ooh. Well, I guess let's see, to understand that question, I'm hearing you say how did things kind of shift from the theory, learning the theory of instructional design to the application? And I don't know. I guess just in getting older personally, I have learned that I have like personal I won't call them deficits, but I'm not as organized as I would like to think I am. So I have basically every day I'm not even exaggerating here. I probably have 45 emails sitting in my inbox, and I probably have 15 projects that aren't on fire but need to be addressed. And then maybe three of those projects are on fire and need to be handled right away. So coming up with a systematic approach that's consistent for every resource I develop or every program I'm designing, it becomes kind of a make it happen kind of approach. And so it's important. I rely on my baseline knowledge of what I learned about the theories behind instructional design, but I use that knowledge and really just, do you ever watch Project Runway where Tim Gunn goes around and he goes, what are you doing? This is a little off here. I need you to make it work. And that is kind of what happens a lot of times where I have to not get caught up in the uh, little intricacies of designing instruction, but I have to keep my mind on the big picture and focus on the deliverables that I'm trying to create. And at the end of the day, I need to make sure those deliverables are hitting the key aspects of what is expected. So sometimes that looks uh, like for example, I have one of the projects I have coming up is Is it okay to give a specific example here? We run with this. Um, Shameless plug, I run the with a team of folks, the North Carolina Climate Education Network. And so what we do is we just take really high level topics, like we're doing algal blooms coming up. And the best practice would be to really get to know the audience, what the gaps in knowledge are, identify what they don't know, and then address that webinar to really support those gaps in knowledge. We don't have time to poll the audience ahead of time. We'll do a poll during the webinar. We always do. But you kind of have to go on your gut and anecdotal observations about, in general, and since I talk to people about water and water resource management daily, I kind of have an idea about where those gaps in knowledge are. But I will say one thing that doesn't or shouldn't get glossed over is the evaluation for effectiveness. At the end of that webinar, I I joke about it when I give workshops and stuff. I will take that evaluation information on a Saturday night with a glass of wine and, kind of feed through it because I live off of that. That feedback is so important for designing future instruction because even if the topic is about algal blooms, my future instruction is going to be modified or delivered in a similar way based on the evaluation data.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you use a specific model for evaluation or is it more that formative evaluation? Because we recently just heard about I had to look it up, the Phillips ROI model for a summative evaluation. I was just curious.
Well, I would say no. I would say I don't use any specific models because I'm back in the make it work mode for doing the evaluation. I want to know 1 to 5, was this a good use of your time? 1 to 5, would you recommend a future webinar like this again or future instruction like this again? Open-ended comments. How would you improve this? Just to let folks air out, because you'll get a lot of information when you just give a blank text field and say, we're listening. A lot of information comes out that way. But I do find a lot of value in giving evaluation questions that are quantitative so that you can get a numerical idea on a like a Likert scale.
Thank you, Lauren. Another question that I have for you here is, and especially because the work that you're doing, right, requires a lot of, it's very specific, and requires a lot of pieces and people. And can you talk about how can educators design place-based learning experience that they connect these students, and in this particular case, some of the projects that you have talked about, right? To their local streams and water quality, and maybe what is the role that the instructional design play in this process?
Ooh, okay. So again, my brain kind of goes off as you're asking that question. So I hope I'm capturing this question properly. But when it comes to water resource management, I think, and I feel pretty strongly about it at this point, but if we're not using streams and rivers in our own communities to teach about water, it's a missed opportunity for making what is otherwise theoretical content very relatable. So place-based is really at the center of, I would like to say it's at the center of everything I do. Like if I go to a classroom or if I go do a teacher workshop, because I offered teacher workshops throughout North Carolina. If I'm in, Wake County or Alamance County, I'm not talking about the Chowan River necessarily, or a body of water that's nowhere near. I will do research ahead of time. I will identify what the watershed is that I'll be in, and we will model streams and rivers that are in that community. So yeah, so let me pause there and make sure I'm on the right track for the question that you're asking.
No, I think you are, or you are, and one of the things that especially as you pause and reflect on it, I can do the follow up on it, which what I'm hearing you saying is that it is very important to have that applied, and place-based learning, especially in the context that you were working, right? And then what I asked that question, the follow-up question is, where do you see, or to what extent, right, does instructional design can play a role in this process, especially the behind the scenes, right? Because you are, to a certain extent, working on the behind the scenes to make this happen. Some of the things are happening in place, but some people don't understand of what is happening behind the scenes before the experience takes place.
Hmm. So, okay, so more behind the scenes. Something that I have found to be helpful are, and I am sorry, I do not know what the names of these documents are, but I'll look on North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's website for the standards. And of course, I'm pretty familiar with the standards. I'm just kidding. They're very daunting. But I will look up what kind of questions the learners need to know to demonstrate, mastery of the subject. And so when I'm looking at those questions, it's actually a really helpful tool. It says, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it'll say something like examples of freshwater streams in North Carolina are. So I might adjust that question to be more place-based or community-based. And so by the end of the lesson, I'll want the student to be able to name a freshwater stream within their watershed. So I will, again, I know where I want the ship to go, but I need to figure out how to make that, how to navigate that ship in a way that the learners, not only just take in the new content and retain it, but find it meaningful. And I'm talking about adult learners too, not just K-12 students. And I've learned, I can't remember what class it was, but adult learners are very similar to children. But the big, big difference I've noticed anecdotally is that adult learners want to take that information and use it the next day. And so when I'm dialing into planning instruction, I'm really thinking about what can I say? What can I teach? What activity can I provide that makes that adult learner want to ask questions about it? And I'll say that a lot too, is when your students are asking questions, that's when they're the most engaged. That's an indicator of success, is when you're evoking more curiosity about the topic. So, kind of considering all these things behind the scenes, makes me more comfortable to deliver the instruction that I've designed.
Thank you, Laura. And my follow-up question to you will be, I think, like, just doing what you mentioned is not an easy task, and I wonder what kind of challenges, you may face, that people may wanted to, if they are either engaged on similar projects or working in a similar capacity, right? Like, what are some of the challenges that they need to be aware, and maybe any strategies, that you can think of that may help them overcome some of these challenges, right?
Well, as far as challenges go, they're abundant. Obviously, time is a challenge. Prioritizing is a challenge. Figuring out what should I spend my time focusing on. But let me focus on the solutions for that. Like having fun, I think, is the key. So, of course, I have to talk about and teach about and provide activities for things that I find as interesting. But boy, when I'm on the topic of something I'm passionate about, there are no obstacles, because I'm rolling, and it's my, like, I don't know, it's my greatest joy to share technical information that folks would otherwise be like, oh, that's not pertinent to me. But taking that information and making it relevant and meaningful, that's the ticket. And so the challenges will always be there. But it's almost like ignorance is bliss when when you don't even have time to think about the challenges because you're so enthusiastic about what you have created for instruction. I think that's helpful for me anyway.
Thank you, Laura. And I know that our time is up. I just want to make sure that if you have any other final words or, words of wisdom for people that are in the field or transitioning, or they're just, recent graduates, any final thoughts?
Mm. Whew. Well, first of all, thank you very much for reaching out to me and uh, having me on the show. I do think it's important for other folks to hear that, you know, taking time for yourself is super important and going for a career that you're passionate about and you can like wake up every morning excited to do. I think that's worth a lot. And if anyone is wondering like what that could look like, I encourage you to just ask questions and find mentors and people want to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out and, you know, put yourself out there, take some risks because that moment where you're nervous and jittery, that's actually the learning process. So keep going.
Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate you for being here and taking the time. It was an honor to have you here. And
Thank
I
you.
just want to thank everybody that is watching and hope you enjoy this session with us. Once again, thank you, Laura, and I
Thank
hope you all
y'all.
have a great time.
Thanks. See you.